Hey guys, welcome back to the channel here. We have Gary's truck in here now. Finally got it in here so we could work on it. Today I would like to try to get the front end off of it. Try to do like the grill here, the headlights, the bezels. I wanted to take the front bumper off, but because this truck has a BTS transmission in it, the ideal spot for these transmission coolers is right in front of these vents, so they mount it right to the bumper. If I can get the cooler off of the bumper without too much work, I'll go ahead and pull this bumper off. The only reason that we're pulling the bumper off is because it makes it a lot easier to get to the core support mounts. Now, we do have an S&B body mount kit for this truck since we are pulling the cab off and having it all fixed up, and then we're going to go ahead and put new body mounts in. The OEM Ford ones are discontinued. The last time I looked, you could get some of them, not all of them. So there's no point in mixing and matching. And the polyurethane bushings, in my mind, are complete trash. You get what you pay for in that scenario. So we have, S&B body mounts. There's no point in replacing the cab bushings without replacing the core support bushings. There's already a new core support in this truck, so we don't need to be taking it off. However, we do have new fenders, and we're going to be taking the cab off and basically just going over this engine and making sure everything has been properly installed, torqued, just basically looking it over. This truck does have a newer engine in it. It was replaced just recently due to a catastrophic failure I do believe he had. Now, he wants to go over it, make sure everything's good on it, make sure everything's nice and tight. Any updates that we need to do along the way, check the oil rail plugs and stuff like that. So we're going to be checking this out once we get it all opened up here. So the idea today is see if we can get this cooler off this bumper, get the bumper off, get the grill out, get this filler off, maybe the inner fenders, because we won't be able to get to everything today, kind of under a time crunch today. However, we're going to try and get as much as we can off of here just to make our lives a little bit easier a little bit later. So once we get this, pulled back in here again to actually pull the cab off, this truck won't be here, and we'll have a little bit more room to work. So that'll be nice. I'm not going to be here for every step of this way. We're going to go ahead and turn the camera on and off so that we can get this filmed and get some stuff shown to you and try to get this all taken apart. If we run into something where, hey, this is something that, you'd want to see, something that you run into, we can go ahead and show that to you as well in this video. But this is going to be mainly just, us tearing this truck down so you can kind of see what pieces and parts, how to get things apart, how to take things out of here, so that, if you do want to work on your own truck and work on doing some of this stuff yourself, such as, removing the headlights, which I've covered the projectors in another video. So, we do cover a lot of this stuff, but we're going to make sure that you know how to do as much as possible, because it is, it's nice to be able to work on your own vehicle. So follow along as we start getting this truck torn down. So we started into this. We took the air box off. So the air box is sitting down here now. So got the air box out along with the snorkel. We went ahead and took the driver's side inner fender out. So if you have a diesel, okay, see this little guy here, and I'll bring this a little bit closer for you. So this is your low vacuum warning light on your dash. So these all have nuts underneath, and most of the time they don't like to come out. So this one did not like to come out, and it is stuck on here. However, there's supposed to be a vacuum bank that these nuts supposed to slide into. Now, this is usually a problem because these nuts are right in the spray pattern of the wheel, so they get the salt and corrosion and stuff, and they get stuck on. Usually these studs break or they snap out of the vacuum bank that's supposed to be here. So luckily they came out of the vacuum bank without breaking it, but had to work them out of there and get the vacuum bank off so that we could get this inner fender out. Now, the only thing that this sensor does is it tells you on the dash if your vacuum pump, which is engine driven on a 7.3, is failing. All right, so if you have an F-Superduty, you don't have one of these. So the only thing the engine driven vacuum pump runs is the actual HVAC system. So whereas these trucks have a booster system, which would be why you have the low vacuum warning light. So we went ahead and took that out. we're going to go ahead and get that off of there later. If we have to make new studs, we will do that. The other thing to note is whoever put this inner fender back in put 3 of the, let's see, we'll count today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so 11 bolts or screws are supposed to hold this inner fender in on this side of the truck. And there was 3. So not surprising, most people don't put them back in. So to remove the inner fender correctly, you need an 8mm and a 5.5mm, and sometimes a Phillips screwdriver. Depends on if you have the trim and if the trim is holding the panel on. It depends on how they put the screws in. Sometimes they kind of go through the inner fender, sometimes they don't. So that's a hit and miss for that. However, those are what you need to take the inner fender out. So we're going to work on getting the passenger side out. It does have most of its bolts in it still. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the camera and I'm going to show you where all these bolts are. You'll have your 5.5mm here up along the edges. You can see them there and up here. And then you'll have an 8mm back here. And you should have 2 8mm that go up through into the core support. As you can see, these ones aren't there, which is no big surprise. On the passenger side, you have this guy right here. Now, this bolts from the inside of the engine bay out, and it attaches the inner fender to the bracketry that bolts to the core support. That one can be a problem generally because the corrosion gets to the clip and then the bolt gets stuck in the clip, and then you got to sit there and screw around with getting that out. So sometimes I don't put that one back in only because it causes problems. And without that on there, that inner fender will stay there without an issue. So then you have bolts up here. Let's see if I can find them. There's one there. So there's 2 on the driver's side that are up inside the fender well, only 1 on the passenger side. And then something else that I'd like to make note of here is, do you see how you can see your engine manifold? Now, Ford did this in 94 and 95. They would put a rubber flap here, okay? So there's a rubber flap here on 94, 95 trucks. The 96 and 97 trucks don't have that rubber flap. They didn't put it on. Probably saved them a penny on each truck. Well, in that scenario, you get what you have here. You have salt spray, you have water spray, you have just about anything that this tire can throw up, hitting that hot manifold as you drive down the road. And we all know that salt loves heat. So when you get salt water, salt, calcium chloride, whatever this crap is that they put on the roads, and it sits on that hot manifold, it just turns it straight to acid. So that's how you end up getting holes in heads up here. This is why you get manifold bolts that are rusty and wanting to fall off, or just deteriorating, and why you get rusty manifolds. So if you have a 7.3 and you haven't put any flap here, I highly suggest putting something here. If you have a nice clean truck, even if you don't drive in the winter, it just keeps the engine nice and clean. Now we're going to go ahead and show you the other side here. So on the other side here, you can see I broke that bolt off. It came right off broken. And then you can see there's a bunch of stuff over here, and obviously a crappy cab mount. However, the core support is nice and clean. It has been replaced, so that's a plus. And we're going to go ahead and get this side all cleaned up as well. Not too much to do here. We're just going to try and pull the body off. You can see that the mount under there is not looking too healthy, so we were definitely going to be replacing those. Not sure why they didn't replace them when they replaced the core support. I know it wasn't Gary that did it. Now, I was talking about this vacuum bank. This is the vacuum bank here. You can see it's got slots in the bottom for those little nut certs, and it's held on just by those. So it doesn't like to come off with the actual warning light attached. So it's kind of like a one-piece part universal type thing. But I got fortunate, was able to wiggle this off of there and get it out of the way, because as you can see, you have your source for your engine-driven vacuum here. You have your vacuum that runs over to the blend door actuators, This is your warning light, your vacuum warning light here, the third one, and then this goes directly to your booster, as you can see. So this is why you don't see these on F-Superduty trucks, because the only thing that the engine-driven vacuum pump runs is the second line here, the HVAC doors. So there's no need for a vacuum warning light. But we're going to go ahead and continue to tear this truck down a little bit here. And the reason that I pulled the inner fenders first is because if you look in here, you can see you can get right to the back of that turn signal, and that just makes life so much easier for taking those out, because I'm not taking the batteries out yet here today, just trying to get the front end torn apart a little bit, save us some time later on. And I'm going to be leaving the fenders on to hold the core support, and we're not going to be doing any electrical splicing or anything like that. So leaving the batteries in is just perfectly fine. But we're going to go ahead and do this way. That way I can get to the bolts for the back of the turn signal so we can take the rest of the front end apart. So I'm going to start by taking these 5.5 millimeter bolts out first. They're the easiest thing to do. And do your best to not lose those, because they do like to go missing, and it's not something you can buy directly at a hardware store. So that one broke off. No surprise, because those go into the fender up here, and that's where the fender always rots away. So you can see it's a little bit loose there. There is one down here behind the front tire. So then we'll go ahead and move on to the 8 millimeter here in the back corner. Luckily that one didn't break. And then we'll get the one in the top here. The ones in the top here can be a problem, because same reason that this one broke here, you have a bunch of salt right here, creeps up in the fender and can cause you problems. So the only one that we have left now, since we're missing the two front ones, is the one that I showed you earlier that is down behind the battery. So we're going to go ahead and attempt to get that one out now. So this truck has a Banks intercooler kit. So we're going to try and get this bolt from the bottom. So you remember me saying why I don't put that bolt back in? That's right there why. Because it just sucks to get it out. Especially if you have an intercooled truck. So, after eating a little bit of dirt, make sure you got everything loose. Make sure that you don't have any push pins holding it on, because there are a couple here. Most have been already removed prior to me. Now the 7.3 trucks have fiberglass insulators on them, and they can kind of make things a little bit more difficult to get out, but they come out pretty decently. So as you can see, this one's out now. Try not to destroy those fabric insulators, because you can't buy them anymore, and not real easy to replace. So if you can't buy it, can't replace it. And I'll go ahead and show you this side now. So here you can see everything's opened up, and that bolt was in this little hole here. So as you can see, that bolt's not exactly easy to get to. It's right above the frame rail. And then you have an intercooler pipe here because this truck does have a Banks kit. Now, we'll probably go ahead and take these pieces and sandblast them. Try to get them nice and clean because there's no point in leaving them the way that they are. You can also see that this side of the core support is pretty good as well. And then that you can also get to those bolts real easy. So the other plus side of this is those two bolts on the bottom there. That's what holds the bumper filler on, or the stone guard. That's the piece below the headlights. So whenever you want to take that off, taking the inner fender out makes it a lot easier because you can get right to it. So we're going to go ahead and continue working on getting the front of this off. And this is the filler here that I was talking about. But now that we have those inner fenders out of the way, we can go ahead and pull these headlights out. If you watched another video I have already posted on my channel about projector retrofits on one of these, this is basically the same way that that goes. I just showed you a better way to see those nuts that we were talking about in that video on the back of these lenses. All right, so same thing as last time. You got two screws up here, you got two bolts here. Those will come off. That'll bring the bezel and the marker light off. Same thing over here. And then once we do that, then we can go ahead and unbolt the header panel. But first we'll have to take the grill off. We're gonna leave the grill on here for right now, get these bezels off. So we'll go ahead and show that to you. Nuts on the back of these lenses should be 11 millimeter, hopefully. So as you can see, I dropped that nut, which is no big deal because it came out on the floor. There we go. So now you pull your light out, go ahead and disconnect your bulbs in the back. And there's your one side off. Repeat for the other side. So this one came out with its stud, which is not good. So when they come out with the stud, this is what you're looking at here. Now, this threads into the back of the signal, and whenever the stud comes out with the nut, there's a bracket on the back of the lights. So that's this bracket here. So what happens is if the stud comes out with the nut, so you can see here that this stud is still in. What happens is if this one comes out with the stud gets stuck behind this bracket, which is attached to this. Now I've had this happen many, many times. The only bad thing about this is sometimes the only way to get this off, depending on what you're willing to sacrifice, is breaking a bezel, cutting a bezel, breaking the light, or something along those lines. Sometimes you can get lucky and get up in there and try to hold this stud with something and then turn the nut out, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. We were fortunate on that one to not have that problem with this side. So same thing, pull it out of there and then go ahead and undo your lights. And sometimes you get lucky and you find things like a cicada. Next step here is I always pull these bulbs out. There's nothing wrong with these bulbs, they all work. No point in trying to break them. So I always pull these out and we'll set them aside. That way they don't get lost or broken. So as for your nuts that you take off, you can bag and tag, or you can just put them back where they're supposed to be. So I always elect, if I can, put them back where they're supposed to be, because when you go to install your next part, all the hardware is there. Now the one that had the stud come out, you can simply just thread it back in. When we go to reinstall this light, I'll probably put a little bit of epoxy or super glue on it to make sure it stays. Your top screws here, just go ahead and thread them back into the radiator support here, the header panel. You don't got to worry about losing them, and they'll be exactly where you need them to be. Now, as you can see, I've already removed the little rubber shrouds here, direct airflow into the radiator. We're going to go ahead and try to get this grill off of here. So there's a little bit of a mess getting that bottom grill out. Looks like there was a repair made at one point and it was kind of not the way it was supposed to be. So we got the bottom of the grill out. Work on doing the top. All right, so there we got the grill out of here, and now you can see that the intercooler's a lot more visible. Just like we did with everything else, we're going to go ahead and drop your hardware, put all your hardware back where it's supposed to be. Next order of business here is we're going to have to take this header panel off of here. And then once we do that, we can go ahead and remove this filler. Like in the previous video, lots of 8 millimeters. So the only ones that are going to be a little bit harder to get to are going to be the ones on the inside here, just because of this intercooler here. But that's why we have the ratchets. That helps tremendously for getting stuff like that. We'll have to get a short socket for that guy. If you work on your own truck, swivel sockets, very handy. So Hopefully this one will work. Yes, swivel sockets are very, very nice to have. So if you are working on your own truck, highly suggest having a set of swivel sockets. Another thing to have is mid-length. Mid-lengths are very, very convenient to have here. So that should be it for the header panel. The only one that wouldn't be here is the one that's supposed to be here. It's been cut out because of the intercooler here, so no big deal. However, you would have one extra here if you didn't have the intercooler. So go ahead and feed your light bulb sockets in so that they don't get caught. Make sure that you're not going to damage those. And then you got to work this guy out. So I didn't unplug the headlight bulbs, knowing that I have enough to do this with them. So I can just unplug them right here. And sometimes you got to push down on the filler there to get this out. They can be sometimes a little bit tight. And there's your header panel off. Now, I've been saying the whole time, you can put your hardware back. So some of these you can put back. So you can put the ones that go in the sides here back in the header panel. You can put the ones that go on the filler here back in. Now, since we're pulling the fenders off, we won't be putting them back in to the fender area here. So we will be tagging those ones and putting them in a bag. Now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put all these bolts back and tag that, and then I'll come back and we'll put this, get this filler off of here. Put the bolts back in, tag these. I will reuse bags until they get a hole in them. No point in throwing them away. Next step is going to be getting this filler off of here. So there is the 2 bolts I showed you earlier in the video on each side. Hopefully they will come out. If not, they're just a speed clip. Just have to get them out, cut them off. So as you can see, that filler panel is now loose on this side. And before you take your last bolt out, make sure you put your hand on this so it doesn't get away from you. And just like that, the filler panel comes off, and we'll go ahead and put the bolts back in this. Now, if you are repainting anything, to put anything back together, now's the time to paint this, because you have joints right here that you can't get to. They always seem to rot out right here. So make sure that if you are going to be doing any kind of painting, now's the time to do it. So you can see here we have the front end torn apart. This is probably as far as we're going to get to on this video today. See that we're going to go ahead and leave this bumper on. This will also give us a baseline on where this front end needs to be when we go ahead and reinstall everything. So before I go ahead and we start pulling these fenders and everything off, we're going to go ahead and get a measurement between the fender and the bumper here. That way, when we put our new bushings in the front, they will be at the right height. So they do shim, up and down. We can add or remove. So we want to make sure that when we go to put this all back together, this will give us a baseline too. So I'm not real upset about leaving the bumper on. It's just going to make alignment a little bit easier because we can get our center correct and then also our height for the body. It'll just make life a little bit easier putting everything back together. However, that's how you get the front of these trucks apart. I wanted to go over that with you guys today, show you what we got going on with Gary's truck. And like I had said, we probably aren't going to get any farther on this today because I still need to put it back outside for the night. We'll be bringing it back in tomorrow and the next day and so on and so forth. And we're going to go ahead and try to video those pieces as well. So don't want to make this truck immovable yet. That'll be the next scenario because once we get the hood off and the fenders and everything, then it's going to be the truck stays inside because we don't want to waterlog the engine more than absolutely necessary. Now you're asking me why would I want to not worry about that? Why leave it inside? I have seen people, and it's happened to me, where I've had trucks sitting outside, trucks that been tearing apart, or you get to them when you get to them, or spare engines that I've bought from other people where they've been covered. They've had tarps over them, in plastic and this and that, and they've even been on the edge of a shed with a roof over them. Water finds its way into everything. And I bought an engine from a guy the one time, and it was covered, it was tarped, it was on the side of his building, protected. And when I got it home, I tore it all apart. 3 of the 8 cylinders was full of water. That's why I learned my lesson. I never let anybody's stuff sit outside. And that's why Brent's truck, you can see the plastic here in the corner. Brent's truck has not been outside since it got here. And it will not go outside until it's ready to go home. If something comes in here, it's going to stay in here until it's done. But until then, we're going to go ahead and stop the video for the day. And we'll get another video up of Gary's truck whenever we get some more done to it here. Hopefully the next step will be, get the fenders off, get the hood off. We'll be getting the batteries out and everything on the sides here so that way we can pull the cab off, get it repaired, and then get it put back on and then start the reassembly process. Thankfully, we don't have to remove the intercoolers or anything like that. The tranny cooler can stay. The core support's already been replaced, which is fantastic. It's a little bit faster process for me to get this done than for him. So appreciate you guys watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to get more updates on Gary's project here, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.